Good evening, everyone. In this room, there are different views, different ways of expression, different emotional intensities, and different roads that lead to conclusions. May we combine clarity of mind with kindness of heart, and may we be impartial without bending to strong personalities. May we sacrifice self-interest for the good of the whole, and may we do our work with love and clarity of vision for the benefit of those we represent. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are in the unceded territory of the Cowichan people. Welcome to our Christmas Council meeting. All right, I'm going to get my glasses. Introduction of late items. Are there any late items?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, there are no late items for introduction.
That the December 16th, 2019 council agenda be approved as circulated. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, there's the bells. That the minutes of November 18th, 2019 regular council meeting be adopted as circulated. All of those in favor? That the minutes of December 2nd annual council meeting be adopted as circulated. Any discussion? All those in favor? And I'm going to move to the to the report of the Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. DeVertai.
Thank you, Mayor Staples. Format's a little after. I'll try and be brief so I can take this off my head as quick as possible. Just going to note that the Paradise Well investigations, a single test well was drilled, and the results of the testing, unfortunately, were disappointing. So at this site, it's not going to be adequate for a groundwater source. No further testing is going to be conducted. The test well will be preserved as a monitoring point, and staff will analyze if there's any benefit to retaining the existing stat right-of-way that we have down into the area for other water purposes. Also note that the pedestrian signals, the fast flash pedestrian signals have been installed at the intersection of Boundary and Government Street now, so those are in place. The business license renewals have been sent out in the mail, and if businesses inside the City of Duncan and hasn't received their renewal notice, please contact City Hall. And pet license renewals were also recently sent out in the mail, and every dog over 4 months of age is required to have be licensed yearly. Payment can be made, and new licenses can be purchased at City Hall or online at the city's website, duncan.ca. And lastly, although it's not in my report, council may have seen or the public may have seen the release that went out today regarding the city's involvement in the security in the neighborhood of the overdose prevention site. So we've been working in partnership with Island Health to improve the neighborhood security by taking over the oversight of that through a contract with Island Health and through the Blackbird Security. So it's an extension of the Safer Community Plan patrols on the highway, and so that will hopefully address some of the neighborhood issues that have been experienced. Thanks.
Thank you.
On the Paradise Well, would you not have to maintain the statutory right-of-way if you are going to even keep that well as a testing station?
Perhaps. One of the issues with the stat right-of-way is that it tied to it is a water agreement with the Cowichan tribe, so we also have to review the needs of that. So we may be able to have the monitoring well and be able to change it. Right now it's access because of the pipes and whatnot as well, so it would probably need updating if we're going to maintain access. So at the moment we're not closing that well, but depending on the discussions around the access and the stat right away, it will depend on whether we long-term keep that monitoring well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Bruce.
Thank you, Mayor. The project on College Street, can you just speak to that very quickly?
Yes, it was approved at the November 18th council meeting, and the developer's working with staff on starting the servicing for that site. There is, as you may be aware, a second piece to the development variance that was required, and so that'll be spoken to later in the meeting regarding the cost of the sewer servicing for the site. So we'll get a bit of an update on that, and then council will determine whether or not to grant an additional variance for the sewer costs. Any other questions on the?
Not on that one, but the E.J. Hughes one is status quo.
Yep, still waiting on that one for the developer to secure some form of parking as been expressed by council. That's one of the big stumbling blocks for the development, to ensure that by taking over the road itself and displacing those number of parking stalls, to secure something else as an alternative in the vicinity.
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you. Reports of staff. Ms. Chanot, are you?
Good evening. So this is an amendment to the development permit with variances for 1027 College Street for the development. Sorry about that. This is for the development of a 21-unit multifamily development with a total of 5 buildings, 2 sixplexes and 3 triplexes. And this was approved, as Mr. DeVertai mentioned, at the council meeting in November. But there's an amendment to that permit for an additional variance for the sizing of the sanitary sewer main. The Works and Services bylaw requires a 200 millimeter service, and the applicant submitted an engineer report which was reviewed by staff, which justifies the existing 150 millimeter size, and the developer will be required to provide a contribution towards future replacement of that sanitary main. But at the present time, it's not being replaced. So I just included some of the slides from my previous presentation, just to show the location at College Street. So here's the intersection of Cairnsmore and Government and College, and the 7-Eleven is right there, and it's just north of it. There's an aerial view. And this is the proposed development with the 2 sixplexes fronting the street, and then the 3 triplexes at the bottom will be at the rear of the property, accessed through a central driveway.
Right. Any questions from council for Ms. Chanot? Councillor Newington?
Thanks, Michelle. You were saying that they're going to give some money or something for if in case there's a problem down the road?
The sanitary main for that street will be replaced eventually by the city. Right now, it's not currently one of the top priority replacements, but they are providing a contribution of $35,000 towards when that takes place in the future.
So presently, the sewer main is 150 millimeters. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And they're proposing that where they are, that it's 200, and they're joining into 150?
The Works and Services bylaw in the appendix has a number of requirements for different size of development, different types of development, and under that bylaw would be required to install a 200 millimeters service and replace that service on the street. And the engineering report and calculations that they've provided show that the proposed development doesn't exceed the capacity for the existing main, for the existing size.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from council? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Did you, okay. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Funding for 135 Kenneth Street, that council instructs staff to fund the purchase of 135 Kenneth Street in the amount of $351,155.71 from the Police Bridging Capital Reserve until such a time as intended use of the property is decided. Do I have a mover and a seconder? And is there anything staff wishes to speak to about this? Anyone? Does anyone on council have questions? No? Okay. All those in favor? Motion carries. 6.3, that council directs staff to include in the 2020 financial plan and give early 2020 budget approval for the totem pole refurbishment of $8,500, the Kenneth Street water main replacement of $150,000, and the Duncan Street project of $438,500. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Is there anything that you want to explain?
Thank you, Mayor Staples. So as you mentioned in the recommendation, there's 3 items here that we're asking for early budget approval on. As the report states, the totem pole refurbishment, we need to get that started now so that it can be complete before the summertime totem tours start taking place. We'd like to have it back up before then. The Kenneth Street water main replacement, there was portions of this project that were already in the 2019 budget, but we've added in the water main replacement or the water main upgrade, and that actually needs to come first in terms of project. So we need to have early budget approval for that so that we can start right away in January. And the Duncan Street project, it was noted that we would like to get this done before the 39 Days of July festival, as that's right in the area, and just working backwards from that date means we do need to start fairly quickly. So as we know, the budget may not be approved till sometime in April or May, and we just want to get started on these items.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Crossman. That council approve amendments to the employee wellness policy is attached to the December 16th, 2019 report of the Director of Finance to add council members and increase the rebate to $168.30. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Does anyone want to explain this? I see some page or sure. Yeah, I'm just going to let staff explain it first. Whoever wants to take that on.
Sorry. All right. So there's 2 items that we're adjusting on the employee wellness policy. The first item is to add council members to be approved for this policy. So it was discussed when we talked about the operating budget back in a committee of the whole that one of the councillors had asked that this be brought to budget. So we added in the cost of $1,000 for allowance for council members to take advantage of the employee wellness policy at the Couch and Aquatic Center. So that's in the budget. It's already in the 2020 budget, but we needed to amend the policy to match that so that council would be listed on there as eligible. And while we were doing that, the District of North Cowichan notified us that their prices are going up for some of their admissions, and therefore they are increasing the total allowance that is allowed for their employees, and it would be prudent of us to change the maximums for ours as well so that they could still get the amount of 10 punch passes that they're allowed within the maximum.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? Councillor Bruce?
So that's $168 per person per year, right? And then do you know what that allows you to do?
I believe it's 30 passes, 30 punch cards.
For the whole building?
For the gym and the pool.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. 6.5, that council directs staff to fund the downtown parking demand study project by using $5,000 from the existing unused 2019 financial plan for parking options and adding $48,780 to the 2020 financial plan to be funded from the parking reserve. Do I have a mover and a seconder? And then I'm going to, it looks like, am I passing this on to you? To Mr. McCusker.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we put out the request for proposals, and we got back 7 responses. And three of those, although they were less than the bid that staff would like to choose, 3 of them were unsatisfactory in our opinion. One was from 11X Incorporated that really only handled one of the 5 requirements, and that was a pretty good data collection job, but nothing else. The urban system bid, which was $34,400, wanted to use city staff and our bylaw officers to do the data collection. There's a couple of issues with that. One is our bylaw department is quite busy right now, as you know. The other is whenever the data is being collected by one party and transferred to the other, there's an opportunity for that to not work very well, and for there to be extras and be additional costs as a result of that. We looked at the McElhaney bid, and the McElhaney bid, they demonstrated a little bit of a lack of understanding of what it was that we were after. And what they put forward, although on the surface it looked pretty good, what it was is they were talking about doing things like taking the peak hour and looking at 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning as being the peak hour of traffic, which we all know is not the case. So that was sort of one glaring example of what stood out in terms of not really fully understanding what it was we were after. Not the urban systems, but the Watt Consulting bid was clearly superior to all of them, including the ones that were more expensive than the Watt Consulting bid, and they demonstrated a complete understanding of what it was that we were after. And so they're going to also add in license plate scanning at key points in the downtown core that will give us the ability to analyze the traffic circulation. So that is what we would like to do, is go with that. And for that reason, we're asking council for $5,000 from the existing unused financial plan for parking options and $48,780 to the 2020 financial plan to be funded from the parking reserve. And that's probably all I need to say.
Is there any questions from council? Councillor Newington.
Thank you, Your Worship. When I was not a council person, there was parking studies done a couple of years back. Why are we doing it again? I'm just not unclear on that.
If I may, prior to my time in the city, so a little over 15 years ago, there was a previous parking study. That was the last time an actual parking study was done in the city. A couple of years ago, it had been contemplated to do a parking study. We had issued an RFP, and then when the bids came back and brought it to council for award, council determined that the prices were higher than they had hoped to see, and then directed us to do the parking advisory committee and whatnot. And then through the parking advisory committee discussions, they felt that in order to make some good decisions on what we need for parking in the long term, we actually need to do not the same type of study that was proposed last time, but a slightly different one that would actually quantify what the need is. Whereas the last one would also then jumped into solutions, this one is simply about quantifying the problem, because it's the groups that we've had or ourselves that are here that in theory have the local knowledge as to where it might be or what type we want, or if we want to build anything, as opposed to paying someone to tell us what we should be building. So this study is about quantifying the issue, and may recall a question that was proposed to council to whether, with respect to the RFP terms of reference itself, whether or not we should include that study of some of the area. So within this is a statistically valid survey of customers and whatnot of the downtown to determine their patterns, employees and whatnot as well. So there's a lot of data collection within this that should give us some good information moving forward. But with respect to parking study itself, the last time one was done for the city was well over 15 years ago.
Councillor Brooke?
Thank you, Your Honor. I just am lost at the point of getting a parking study that says what the study will not address. It will not address solutions, but will rather quantify the problem. I think we're all as aware of what the problems are. To that end, I would like to say that as many times as I come downtown, I do not find a parking spot. And I defy anyone to drive around with a reasonable distance of 2 or 3 blocks and not find a parking spot anytime you want. You know, we see this all the time. Well, parking. I do not see a parking problem. When I look at more urban areas, Victoria is a perfect example, perhaps they have parking issues. We don't have them here. We simply do not have them. The old plan from 30 years ago, when you wanted to go to the Twisted Mug and you just pull up and park outside of it, worked because there was nothing going on down here. But the city has become reasonably vital, and so we're certainly seeing an uptake of parking. But I just do not see the need to spend $50,000 to tell us, yeah, it's full. It's full, but it's not over full. I just can't support this. Thank you.
Councillor Bruce?
I feel the same way. I wouldn't want to see us spend $50,000 on a parking study. I come down every day too, round and about, and the odd time you have to, but people don't seem to want to walk 2.5 or 3 blocks from our $2 parking for 24 hours, and I would not support us spending that kind of money on a parking study, like Councillor Brooke was saying, certainly with no solutions anyway. But I'm not in favor of this motion.
Councillor Capps?
Thank you, Mayor Staples, and I certainly appreciate the concern about the price tag on this, and I definitely understand what you're saying. However, I think that I don't see the same problem in the not identifying of solutions. I think that it's really important that we do get all of this information and this data so that we have the problem articulated in a way where, you know, here we're saying amongst ourselves, well, I feel there's a problem, or I feel that there's not. I think that it's really important to have the data to back this up, and I think it's important to have the data and the information to empower our parking committee to make intelligent and informed decisions. I think that, and I'll be upfront, I do not drive. I still plan to vote and support this as of where I stand right now. I think we've come this far in identifying that we need to have an accurate look at what the actual problem is. I understand it feels very easy to say things like, oh, identify things like there's this many spots, or I feel that these are the times, but I really do think it's important that we have a factual, data-based leg to stand on when we say these things, so that we can say that from an informed place and empower the committee that's made up of local people and local business owners, and it, has been very carefully put together so that we can have the problem clearly articulated with data, and then the solutions coming from the local people that are living it and experiencing it. That's kind of why I feel like I'm okay to vote in favor of this, and specifically when we look at the specific RFP, the specific proposal from Watt Consulting, and the depth of the detail to which they're going, things like the license plate scanning, that's going to help us identify a lot. So I also feel that although it does seem like rather a high price tag just to accurately identify the problem, it has been quite some time since this has been studied in depth, and it will ideally be quite some time before we ever have to do it again. So although it does behoove me to spend
money, I'll be honest, to continue to subsidize cars, does bother me, especially these large price tags. But I do think that this information is well worth it. It doesn't come cheap to get it done properly, so I'll be supporting this.
Can I just ask, just for a bit of, how did a refresher on how this came to this stage? Because it was the parking committee was struck, and it was a recommendation from the parking committee. So if we can just have a summary again of who the parking committee is and how they came to this point, and then I'll speak to my point. But I just would like that because.
I'd have to dig that up and don't have it super handy, but there's representatives of the business community, resident of downtown, DBIA, Chamber of Commerce as well, as who the committee was made up of. There was a specific terms of reference for the committee that was made up of that was approved, by council. They made several recommendations, some of which we implemented in a trial and then amended, as you may recall, over the summer with the 90-minute and so on. And that committee felt that in order to look to the long term and the medium term on what is it that we need, and perhaps in the end, we don't have a parking problem, we have a parking perception problem. We will only really know that truly if it gets studied. And to the price tag, I'm always still, after all these years in working in local government, always amazed at the price tag of whether it's water mains, sewer mains, road construction, or the like, of the price tags are always more than I would certainly like to see. But as you can see by the bids themselves, it's in the, we're not, certainly not picking the most or suggesting the most expensive one. From a price tag perspective, the only thing that we could potentially address, other than not approving, which is your prerogative, of course, would be, as I mentioned in the earlier point, there was a statistically valid survey piece towards it, which was potentially, depending on how you might view it, more of a consideration of what are people's motivations for driving versus using alternative forms, and is the parking perception deterring people from coming downtown? So that was one of the pieces to the puzzle that was viewed by the parking committee in particular as being an important addition to the terms of reference. So up to council if we proceed, and up to council as to what that terms of reference ultimately looks like as to what we include. So,
Emmett.
Thank you, Your Worship. Also, this came from the strategic priority council strategic priority, encourage a thriving downtown and complete a downtown parking review. And one of the things that it says here is encouraging a thriving downtown. The perception of parking, whether it's a reality or just a perception, it does more than keep people from driving downtown. It keeps businesses from moving downtown. It keeps development from occurring downtown. And for us to be able to quantify that and determine what it is that the city needs in order to enable the downtown to become a more vibrant downtown core, to have more of what we love here, and to have that done right, I think this study is going to give us that.
Thank you. And this was directly a recommendation from that parking committee as well. And I just wanted to say that, actually I have one more question. So for the, holding in mind, for the increased capacity, did it indicate how many years forward they're looking for the capacity that we'll need? How far into the future would they be looking through the study?
I think what it was it's just looking, well, I know what it was, it's just looking for what the issue is right now, and then what we do as development occurs. And so as development occurs, what we need to
How we address it then. So it would give us that information for 5, 10, how many years forward do you feel?
Give that information, if business as usual keeps continuing and development as usual keeps continuing, we will end up getting information that will help us with that. That will change, of course, as vehicles become perhaps used less and our transportation system shifts more towards active transportation and perhaps better transit. All of that will shift. But on a business as usual basis, that would give us what we need moving forward.
Okay. And I would just like to add that, being at this table for a number of years now, this has been one of the number one concerns that, and I know that it's not isolated to just Duncan. I think downtown cores, this is one of the number one conversations. The BIA at that table, I mean, we hear that every single BIA meeting, parking comes up, and there does have to be a way. This is something that is important to the business community as well. This is something that they've been, and again, Councillor Capps, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the BIA, what we hear from the business community often is this perception of parking from some and lack of parking from others, that this is an area that has raised a lot of contention and where people have spent far more than $50,000 worth of hours discussing over the past 7 or 8 years now that I've been sitting at this table. And so I would really like to see this move forward so that we can support the business community and know where we're headed and what we need and what the real issues are. Because right now there's a lot of them are, I don't know, for lack of a better word, hypothetical issues. I think that may be fair to say, some of them, and some of them are concrete issues, and all it is a lot of conversation about what we think is happening without knowing what's going on. And again, this has been really important from our downtown business community, so I'd like to see us support this. Any further discussion from council? Councillor Bruce?
Thank you, Mayor Staples. I would stay with my, I won't, but I park a gravel truck down here sometimes, and I go over to the mound, and I mean, they've cleared more. The band has cleared more area there, and they're going to pave it for parking, I understand. And that's, I think the problem here is people will not walk for 2 or 3 blocks, and there's lots of room on the mound area at this point, as some of it is metered parking, of course. But I just feel that that's too much money for our little city to pay for a study, and I'm not in favor of this.
Councillor Capps?
Thank you, Mayor Staples. Certainly, I could offer a little bit of the view from sitting at the DBIA table as their liaison, and that there is a certain amount of frustration around parking, and whether, as you say, some issues that will be concrete and some that will be hypothetical. And I see a great deal of value in having an objective third-party document that just states these are the issues and this is why they are what they are, because nobody around this table is a traffic engineer, or I don't feel that I have any of the technical expertise to be tasked with making these decisions appropriately. Not that it would ultimately fall on us as in that way, but I just think there is a lot of value to be had in having the problems clearly identified and having them laid out. We do have parking reserved for this, for these types of things. So I think it would be appropriate to support this, just so that we can say this is what the problem is, whether it is what we are, what has been suggested as the problem or lack of problem. I think it would just be really good to have that information.
Any further discussion from council? Councillor Newington.
I just have one question. Where the money that we're planning on spending for this, where is this coming from?
Coming from the parking reserve.
From the parking reserve.
Specifically set aside for parking meters.
So the money that we get from the parking meters goes into a parking reserve. Is that basically how it works?
So we get from developers who sometimes give money in lieu of parking places, a reserve that's been built up over the years. Actually, Peter would probably know more about where that's come from.
Yeah, some of it, from parking in lieu, as the director was mentioning, that so if a developer's short on parking in their development and they do a payment in lieu of providing certain parking stalls, that goes into one reserve. There's also a number of years ago the city put in money towards an annual amount into a parking reserve. That stopped several years ago, perhaps even before my time, so that's just been what's accumulating in interest since that. So we haven't been putting into it other than the in lieu amounts since that time.
So we're not taking away from any other need in the city to do this study?
It's strictly for
It's already ear tagged
purposes.
for this?
That's right, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Book?
Thank you, Your Honor. So my understanding then is there is a belief that there is a parking problem downtown. and we're proposing to spend $50,000 on a study that is going to tell us whether we have a parking problem downtown or not. The worst case scenario, it tells us we have a parking problem, but it doesn't tell us any solutions, because the truth is, when you walk around down, there is parking in every spot. There is parking available, short of building a parkade, which I just don't see as a solution to anything. I'm just seeing this, we're gonna throw $50,000 at this thing to shut up some people who've been complaining for years, because their perception is the reason business isn't better than it is we have a parking problem. Again, I'm going to say we don't have a parking problem. Every one of us has come down here in a vehicle, and at any time of the day, you can always find a parking spot. At the worst case scenario, which is perhaps this time of year, which Christmas, which we hope is our busiest time, the farthest you'd have to go is somewhere down Canada Avenue or over there in the Mound and walk. The idea that you can park right outside the store that you want to go to is gone. And that people are hoping that we're going to have some magical solution to this thing. This is not going to happen. I just can't see, without any idea of what a solution would be to a problem. I can't support spending $50,000 to say, yeah, it's a problem or it's not a problem. I don't see that. Thank you.
Any further questions from council? Councillor Newington? That's okay.
So, in saying hearing what Councillor Brooke has to say here, so is there any way you can amend what they're going to give you, so that we know that there is a problem or there is a perceived problem? Can we not ask them what they feel that their solution is?
Yeah, go ahead.
Through the mayor, I think what we hope to get from them is to understand, to get a solution from them, to get the idea, not perhaps to get the solution of build something here or do this over here, but to understand that on the western edge of town, there may be 60 employees, or maybe it's 30 employees that are parking on the street and moving their cars around. And if there was some employee parking that was provided over there through some development, through whatever form we took to get it to that point, then that would alleviate some of the issue. If there's a problem on the east side of town or west side of town, we need to determine that. We need to determine what the perceptions are of people through the survey to say, no, I don't come downtown for that. If parking was better, I'd come downtown. That would be a good thing to know. Because even if it's just a perception, we need to do something about that perception. Because the economics of the city of Duncan are kind of riding on what we do about that and other issues.
And earlier you had also said that this helps in planning for the future as well. So whenever so it will help to inform that, which is also part of long-term planning, correct? Mr. DeVertai?
If I may just add one thing relating to the past parking study. The past parking study was done in conjunction with two pieces to it. One was the traffic circulation study at the same time, and then it also studied, which we're looking to do down as a next, not phase, but a separate component of work for the master transportation plan that we'll be doing in conjunction with North Cowichan's work as well. But the parking study at the time identified an issue with parking at that time from a capacity perspective, but actually turned that on its head a little bit and identified that there wasn't so much a capacity problem at that time, but that there was actually a usage problem. And therein, in the subsequent years and still today, was the focus on trying to ensure that employees are not parking on, or business owners are not parking on the street and leaving those on-street parking stalls for utilization by customers. But that was well over 15 years ago. So to get a snapshot at least of what is going on today, the only true way to do that is unfortunately to spend some money and study that, so that we can actually capture where are we right now. And this one looks to say what will we need to do in 5 to 10 to 20 years. But adding the next piece, which was specifically, at least with the last council's view, to say let's not have someone else tell us how we need to fix it. Like we kind of like, it's, as Councillor Brooke has mentioned, it's there's either you do a parkade or some additional, if you have a capacity issue, you add capacity. How we go about doing that, it doesn't take rocket science to figure it out. You either have to get some land and put some other parking stalls, put some underground parking, or build a parkade. There's limited options. It's about finding land and building things, which will be extremely expensive. So if we can quantify whether we definitively have a problem or not, is pretty important, because there is some perceptions problem. I've certainly had people come to me and express that. I'm sure each of you have had it. And so is it a perception problem? Maybe. I certainly have come down on busy Saturdays, and most of the time I can get a spot too. But how else, other than all of council and staff telling everybody they're wrong and we're right, there's enough space, without actually having something concrete to say so? I'm not sure how we would ever combat that. And the other reality is, we may come downtown because we must, or we choose to and really need to. Others may be avoiding the downtown and would come if we had that little bit more capacity. That's debatable, I suppose, and that's what the intention of that survey piece was, to try to address.
Councillor Capps, did you? No, of course it is.
Thank you very much. And I agree with a lot of what Councillor Bruce and Councillor Brooke have been saying. The days of parking right in front of the shop that you're going to are over, I believe, and I agree that there's a lack of willingness to walk or to make those accommodations, right? So I definitely agree with a lot of what you're saying. I also think that the data that we're getting from this is really to empower, informed decision making. There's a lot of stuff like the expression "you don't know what you don't know" comes to mind. And having them come to us with a detailed look of all of these different, you're talking about different things, different areas of town, different ways that the traffic are moving, how everything's playing together, that's very valuable. And in looking at that, it empowers us. When I say us, I mean the committee and the community, to find those solutions in a way that I think will be a lot easier once they're backed up with that information.
Councillor Brooke?
So we changed the parking times with the idea that part of the issues we had was that employees of businesses downtown are using up all the active parking. So now we have the parking changed to 2 hours or 90 minutes or whatever it is. So there's your employee is downtown. He has to go out 4 times a day and move his car. So he moves his car 4 times. We would certainly hear from the public if that guy had to drive around for half an hour 4 times a day to find a parking spot. But apparently he's able to move it and come back to work. So as far as a parking issue, it's all perception. It is the perception of the small town Mayberry, where you just drive up and get out, little parallel parking and everything's available. I defy anyone to not find a parking spot within a reasonable circumference of the city core. I mean, there's just lots of parking. There's lots of parking in the city core. You don't have to go out. I just think there must be a better way of looking at this issue than spending $50,000 on, yeah, you're right. It's not a huge issue. Thank you. I'm not going anymore.
Any further questions? No? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion defeated. We'll move on to the Canada Avenue Floodgate Drainage and Road Upgrade Project that Council support the North Cowichan application to the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for $750,000 for the Canada Avenue Floodgate Road and Drainage Upgrade Project, and that Council approve a contribution of 17.6%, approximately $93,055, to the portions of the Canada Avenue Floodgate Road and drainage upgrade project related to the flood well utilizing police bridging capital reserves as described in the December 16th, 2019 report of the CAO. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Anything from staff? I think $93,055 is more than that's an interesting approximate, right down to $55. Did you want to say
If
something?
I may, the reason why it's still approximate is because it's based on the specific budget, and so it's based on the 17.6%. It could end up being slightly more than that for that particular component of the project, or it could be slightly less than that. Just depends on what the actual numbers come in at, as opposed to arbitrarily rounding it to something. So the project itself, as described, is to install a similar system at Canada Avenue to what exists on Lakes Road, where you have a flood wall that has the ability to slide in gates. Right now at Canada Avenue, because of the road issues and the design at that time and the budget constraints that we had, the project had to stop short of doing that and just have the walls themselves. So in large-scale events, even smaller scale events, as has occurred in past years, the North Cowichan staff will just put in sandbags or the large-scale sandbags, and that can only get us to partway through up to it doesn't get us all the way to the 1 in 200, and it's also extremely time-consuming and impractical, and close the road quite early. So the project will have some road raising, but it also mainly puts in additional flap gates and whatnot that allow the road to be able to stay drained and have it the water cleared away, and the road access would be much more consistent, at least for the first part of the year. Probably still every 1 in 10 years because of the area there. We're going to still see road closures on Canada Avenue. It's an unfortunate aspect. Without raising the road a considerable amount, that'll still be required for the foreseeable future. It'd be quite an expensive project to take it to that next level. So, but what this will do is give us full 1 in 200 year flood protection for the city, and this is a contribution just to the flood works itself, and North Cowichan will and the grant amounts will pay for the costs of raising the road itself.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Bruce?
Thank you, Mayor. So, Peter, would the main part of this be a gate across Canada Avenue?
So, yes,
concrete
essentially
gate?
It'll be. I'm not sure the actual design. It's likely concrete, but sorry, not concrete. Steel pieces that would get slid in and keyed into the roadway. So it only get installed under certain scenarios once the water levels breach a certain height. So for the most part, the changes to the system would allow the road to stay clear even in most of the frequent rainfalls. But it's when the waters get high enough, it's going to be required probably at an earlier stage than the Lakes Road floodgate, which I think, other than testing, we've never seen that one actually get implemented. This one will probably get implemented at a more frequent basis. But it is the insertion of an actual gate that blocks the roadway you can't actually get through.
So there will be a gate built, and it'll be in our public yard somewhere?
It'll keep, likely, I don't know if I've ever discussed this actually with North Cowichan, but there's the Phillip pump station is right there. I assume they're going to keep the gates right there. Similarly, at the Lakes Road ones are kept close by there in the dog park area.
So if things got bad, the gate goes in place, and we pump the water over the gate?
Correct. Well, not so much over the gate
I
itself.
know, around, whatever,
around beside
to keep it dry there. The road would not be open.
Right.
But it would be dry.
We would be dry. So it's the same exact scenario as Lakes Road. It's only under extreme scenarios where we would end up needing to close those two roads and put the gates in.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. 6.7, the council support in principle the proposal from Mark Lakeman, Communitecture, as described in the December 16th, 2019 report of the CAO for facilitating community discussions and creating concepts for the Whistler Street area, 85 Station Street. And the council directs staff to further discuss the draft proposals and timing for the work in 2020 with Mark Lakeman, incorporating feedback from council. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Anything from staff?
Only really to highlight that Mr. Lakeman's team obviously is quite interested in doing the project. Their initial proposal, they've revised that number downward somewhat. It's still, again, quite an expensive dollar amount, but given what they're proposing and with the two project, we believe it's likely worthwhile. I've left it as supporting in principle, and direct us to further discuss the proposals and the timing. If just in case there was some feedback from council that you wanted to see something tweaked, or only approve one of the two of them, or however you want to proceed with that. So,
Any questions from council? Councillor Newington.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a question, but I was very pleased to read that he's planning on incorporating VIU students in the planning process. I think that's a very wise thing to do, and it's certainly a pay it forward thing. It's good to see.
Councillor Capps.
Thank you, Mayor Staples. I was pleased with that as well, and as well just with, you find a lot of emphasis on community engagement throughout this proposal, and I did have a couple of people approach me or ask me questions. They were somewhat concerned that we were hiring someone to design these spaces or to redo these spaces, and so to just really clarify that, you know, they're not the ones that are deciding what this is going to look like. This is a participatory design process led by a team to help the community with a series of community events to help put these spaces together, and I'm really, really excited at the potential for some improvements to the Whistler Street area. I think there's a lot to be done there around safety, and I'm really excited to have a group like this with such an emphasis on community doing this. As we know, staff capacity, we would not be able to take this on in-house right now, and I think it's really important that we address this, so I'm really excited about this proposal.
And also the training of VIU and giving them that experience so that we are building capacity within the community is something that really stood out for me as well, because that's important to build that here, so it allows us to do that at the same time. Councillor Brooke?
I do have some problems with the Whistler Street due to the current and ongoing improvements that we hope to be having for the Trans-Canada Highway with regard to the traffic of pedestrian traffic going up and down there. Whistler Street is currently really a glorified alley. It opens the backs of all the properties on the Trans-Canada Highway. There are a couple of commercial operations on Whistler, but other than those, there's nothing. I've been down there at night and had a look at it. I firmly believe that if it had proper lighting, we would see a vast improvement. I just don't want to throw a whole bunch of money at it only to find out that the issues have changed or modified because we have had a solution or a semi-solution to some of our homeless traffic wandering up and down there. So I would caution that while I'm sure it's a good idea, I'm not sure that the timing is excellent right now until we further have a look at the things that we have on our plate now that we're going to attend to. And again, then for the old Red Balloon place, I'm just lost, but I don't see anything wrong with it. I quite like it the way it is. It's just a little green space in the middle of town, which we have not a lot of. But I'll leave that one for now. Thank you.
Councillor Bruce?
Yes, I was just going to speak. Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to speak about the Red Balloon site too, and I enjoy it the way it is. I think it could be a city project just to maybe pull the footings out and clean it up a little bit, plant a couple of trees, but I wouldn't want to have huge expense to do some kind of a study or anything on the Red Balloon site. I think it's beautiful little open space right in the middle of the city. Thank you.
Councillor Capps?
Thank you, Mayor Staples. I definitely agree that I love the charm of 85 Station Street the way that it is. I love having a little pocket of green space in the city. I go and run around there with my daughter a lot, and a lot of the members of the community that have spoken to me about it have expressed a similar wish that it would stay quite similar to how it is now, or you know, in that park-like nature. And so what we're paying for here is just to formally have that discussion with the community and to have them formally tell us what they would like it to look like. I think that it's important to get that feedback from them, and I think that we probably might hear that as a lot of the input. So I think it would just be good to receive that properly from the community so that they're able to make the decision on the future of that site.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Summary of building permits. That council received the summary of building permits from the building inspector for information only. Mover and a seconder. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Acting mayor schedule. That council approved the following acting mayor schedule for 2020. Councillor X for January to April, Councillor Duncan May to August, and Councillor Y for September to December. So we need to, I believe we have 2 people on the list that would be potentially going into these slots. Is that correct, Ms. McWilliam?
Yeah, thank you. They're left blank as it is a council decision to decide who would be acting mayor. As council is likely aware, there is a small amount of compensation that comes along
Could you
with.
speak up, please,
Sorry.
Paige?
Yeah, absolutely. As council's probably aware, there is a small amount of compensation that's provided for the additional duties that go along with acting mayor. So that's just over $200 a month. And again, it is a council decision. However, it must be made before the end of the year for the year to come. So what previously happened was council, each 3 council members took on 4-month terms. And the way that would work out, if each council member so chooses, is it would be an opportunity for everybody to be acting mayor twice during the 4-year term.
And who would be up right now for these potentially? Who's sort of next in line? Because we've had 2 or 3 already this year?
That's right.
3
So
this
we've
year?
had Councillor Capps, Councillor Brooke, and Councillor Middlemas in the role for 2019. So there's an opportunity for Councillor Duncan, Councillor Newington, and who am I missing?
Councillor Bruce.
Councillor Bruce, if you so choose. I
Okay.
did take the liberty of filling in Councillor Duncan's preference for your consideration because he is away at this meeting, and he did advise me that he would prefer May to August if you are supportive of that.
Okay. And so I guess I would start with Councillor Newington and Councillor Bruce. Would you like to fill in either of the 2 slots available? You can use your mic, please.
As I'm away in January, I will put my little paw up to do the May to, or the September to December.
And Councillor Bruce, would you like and you don't have to take it, but if you'd like the opportunity to do the January to April?
Yeah. I would really, really like to. Is there any chance of getting the check before Christmas?
So we'll add Councillor Bruce into January to April, and Councillor Newington from September to December, and Councillor Duncan from May to August. And is there any further discussion on these items?
Are you going to be away?
Well, particularly for January to April. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. I need to put these back on. That council appoint 1 council member to the advisory design panel for a non-voting position. And that meeting is on the last Thursdays now of the month from 10 until 12, roughly. It starts at 10. I know that because it interrupts another meeting of another committee that I sit on. So I have been the advisory design panel non-voting member. It does conflict with another committee that I sit on, that I've been appointed to. Who from council would like to go on the ADP officially? I will still attend as many meetings as I can because I find it an interesting process, but I want to make sure that there's someone that's able to be there the entire meeting, which I will not be. So, who wants to do it? Are you going to volunteer, or are you going to suggest someone else?
I was going to volunteer.
Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to do it? Yeah, okay. All right. So Councillor Bruce then? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. External liaison appointment to Cowichan Valley Independent Living. The council appoint Councillor Newington to act as liaison in the non-voting capacity to the Cowichan Valley Independent Living Society. Do I have a mover and a seconder? And Councillor Newington, this is something that you had wanted to go on. One of the things that we've been trying to do is to ensure that people are liaisons to committees that they sit on inside and outside the city, so there's continuity, and so Councillor Newington's okay with this. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Waterworks Regulation Bylaw number 3204, 2019, that Council adopt Waterworks Regulation Bylaw number 3204, 2019, a bylaw to provide for the operating, maintaining, and use of the city waterworks system. Okay, mover and a seconder. Is there any thing that staff wants to say, or anything anyone wants to say about this?
Oh, sorry. I did just want to raise for the previous item that there is an opportunity for council. In the past, this council has done appointments to committee, to external advisory committees and to internal council committees on an annual basis. It's not necessary, but it is certainly optional. So if you have any changes you'd like to make, that would be a good opportunity to do it.
Yeah. So yeah, if there is, so I have met with with council members and talked to them about their positions. But at any time, if there's something you would like to change, if you don't want to be on a committee anymore, if you'd like to make changes, then that option is to have that discussion. So the Waterworks Regulation Bylaw. Is there anyone that wants to say anything about that from staff? No? So quiet.
I'm very happy to if you have any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion carries. That council adopt fees and charges amendment bylaw 3205 2019, a bylaw to increase 2020 water rates by 3%, increase 2020 sewer rates by 7%, change the metered water rates to the new structure, and increase garbage rates by 4.2%. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Is there anything that staff would like to speak to this before I ask council? No? Straightforward? Any questions from council? Councillor Bruce?
So this then is just a reflection of the costs that we're incurring providing these services. Is that correct?
That is correct. The water and sewer rates are, they're a self-sustaining budget, so we charge enough water rates to run the water system, and we charge enough sewer rates to run the sewer system, and it's they self-balance themselves. And the garbage rates are being increased due to a revised quote, a current quote we've received on the replacement of our garbage truck, which is coming up in a couple of years. And we're not going to quite have enough money to replace it, so we have raised the rates a bit to help with that expense that's coming up.
Thank you. Any further discussion from council? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion carries. Are there any council members who wish to make a report? The final one of this decade.
Can I just make a quick correction?
Yes, please.
My apologies. There's a typo in the resolution there. On the agenda, the number of the bylaw is 3205, not 3025. So the resolution is correct, just the title is incorrect. I just wanted to point that out to you.
Thank you. So any council members who'd like to speak to anything in council reports? No? We did a pretty big report at our last council meeting for our annual general meeting. So I will just say for everyone to have a safe and wonderful holiday, and thanks for everything that everyone at the staff and Public Works and in the building and the fire department and all the businesses in our community, and the BIA and the millions of other organizations and people here. I just wish that everyone has a safe and wonderful holiday, and to remember to be kind out there, because I noticed that there's a lot of horns beeping and a lot of short tempers in places. And if there's anything that we can remember at this time of the year, it's to take a deep breath and good time to demonstrate kindness. And I'd also like to thank Public Works too. Do we have an amount of food that was collected from Public Works from donations last week? For their annual donations? Okay. Okay, that would be great. And question period. Yes. Any questions you have that are related to items on the agenda only? So if you'd like to go up to the microphone and state your name, and then if there's a question on an item on the agenda.
Okay. Thanks for letting me speak. Just two items on the agenda. The one was about the Mark Lakeman. And so thank you for voting it, and we look forward to working together to do this. Councillor Brooke, I know you, because I know you live down the street, the Whistler Street. I live at the end of Whistler Street, and you're right, it's a glorified alley right now, but me living on the street, down the street, or at the end of the street kind of thing, I think it's a great place, and I think there's a whole lot of potential there, and I think that this is a great place to start. And so thank you for, and I have been in contact with Mr. Lakeman as well. We emailed back and forth, so I learned more about what he does and how he does it, and so I'm happy. Then also about the waterworks, about the fee structure that you just voted in. We got a letter a couple months, maybe a month or so ago, saying that this is what's going on. This is the new fee structure. Proposed fee structure. If you have comments or issues on it, kind of thing, email them, and then they would raise these questions to you or these comments to you. And so I thought that I didn't hear that that was done, or I don't know whether my comments were raised in as far as the fee structure goes. So I just wanted to let you guys know that because I was against it. The reason I'm against it is because. It's not based upon consumption. It's based upon the width of your pipe, basically, and the width of my pipe is thicker, so I'm getting charged $300 more along to the based upon the proposed structure, and so and I think that I'm actually how would you call it? I've done a lot of work in the area about consumption, and what my comment was that, and you also guys said that you don't put the tap on when you brush your teeth. And there's these comments going, okay, we're here to lower water consumption. The comment I had was that I don't know how far that's going to go. These kind of measures are going to go, but my idea was along the lines of having a building inspector certified gray water systems. That you get the toilet rebates, right? Do a gray water system rebate, and then building, Dave, you get Dave to go down, and so these kind of ideas, and so might go further as we're a landlocked. I'm hearing that certain wells, water is an issue, and so we can do urban rainwater systems. We can do gray water systems. We can do a whole pile of things because we're landlocked, as in all our water is from relationships from everybody else. And so the more we can do internally, anyway, that's what got me going with the fee increase that now you just voted in. But I just had some ideas that go on consumption. Don't go on the width of your pipe. And so anyway, I know there was a lot of studies and everything to get to that point, but that was when I saw it, I was like, hey, okay, well, how does this work? And it's just the width of my pipe. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. It's too bad you didn't see the Environment Committee application when it was out. It would have been great. And some of those ideas that you're talking about too, I know that they're being discussed at the Environment Committee, but also in other places in local government and different layers of government. So just to give you that, yeah.
I'm sure there's lots more.
And so, do you have a question? You can say thank you.
Just wanted to say thank you because this isn't the first time that you've been here and been the only member of the audience and come up and spoken and had questions in question period and had engaging ideas and stuff. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming.
Thank you. And one of the things that got me here more regularly is because you can sign up to get the email.
Excellent. Good. That's wonderful.
Facebook is pretty powerful that way. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's when I got the email a few days before. I know what's on there, and then I go if I got an issue, then I can come, right? And then is it on webcam too?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is it live webcam?
Yeah.
So I live 5 minutes walk away. If I really have a problem with something, kind of thing, I'm watching the webcam. I can walk down.
It's very, very true. Thank you.
Get here for question period and lay into you guys. So
Thank you.
you've given the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Participatory democracy.
yeah, exactly.
Thank you for participating. Yes.
Yeah, we're participatory. 5,000
Mhm.
people. We can do a whole lot of things with 5,000 people, right?
Mhm.
It's we've got a lot of relationships from all these different places all around that we've got to manage. And I just see this as being a very unique place, and that there's a whole lot of things that can happen. You can be a leader in a lot of things.
Thank you.
Let's just say.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, and I gotta put my glasses back. All right. And a motion to close, that the meeting be closed to the public under the following sections of the community charter to discuss matters related to committee member appointments, section 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, or another position appointed by the municipality. Employee relations, section 91C, labor relations or other employee relations, and land disposition, section 91E, the acquisition, dispossession, position, or expropriation of land or improvements, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably expected to harm the interests of the municipality. That's a lot sometimes for some reason. Second, okay. And so we'll give a few minutes to get settled into our closed meeting.